me and Karen from the library for the opportunity. It's really unprecedented times, as you know, with COVID, and it's fun to be able to present to people from all over the country in a format like this. So I know your time is precious. You have a lot of things you could be doing this evening, and you chose to spend the evening with us. So thank you for that. It's very exciting to see how many people are interested in growing their own food. And I think there's never been a better time than now to do that. So I'm just going to share a little bit of my history. You know, my formal education is exercise science and psychology from Illinois State. These pictures are just a few of my career highlights. 2013 was a big year for me. Won small business of the year for the city of Wheaton. Had the ability to train Jerry and Estella Hayes from The Biggest Losers. Those are down in the bottom right-hand corner, before and after, local Wheaton residents. And then in the bottom left corner, I love that picture. I'm 8 months pregnant with my youngest, so I could not fit into Jerry's before pants, but the pant legs are his wife, Estella, and my other dear friend, Amanda, who was my head trainer at the time. So those are his before pants. You can see how much they changed, and they went back to win the 150,000. So that was a pretty powerful time. In the top right corner is the Tower Garden, and those are my girls. We live outside Chicago in a city, Wheaton. We're partnering with the Wheaton Public Library this evening. And in that picture, they're about, 8 and 3. So that picture's pretty old. I've had my tower for 7 years now. And so tonight I'm gonna share just the differences in traditional gardening and then what I call the future of food, hydroponics, using water to grow food, and the benefits of that. So we're going to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then we're going to talk about simple solutions. So I really want to address 4 key areas. Water is the first one, and that really is a problem, right? By 2025, 1.8 billion people will expect or experience, some type of absolute water scarcity. 2/3 of the world will be living under some water-stressed conditions. And then by 2030, which is 10 years from now, it's not very far off, half the world will live under some conditions of high water stress. And those of you that are parents on the call, I think I kind of fast forward in my children's lives and say, where are they going to be in 10 years? What are they going to be doing? And it really saddens me to think that they may be stressed with water, and not something we can live without, right? So we have to find different ways to conserve water. And the main source, the main thing we use water for right now in the US is agriculture. Traditional agriculture uses 80% of our water, and over 90% in some of the Western states. So the chart on the right shows you how thirsty our food is, how much water it takes to bring that produce from seed to our plate. And so you can see a head of broccoli takes over 5 gallons of water. The second piece there is 1 walnut. How many of you like to eat walnuts or pecans? I do. And I can tell you, I never eat just one of them. So 1 walnut takes 5 gallons of water to bring to us. And 1 head of lettuce, I think that's probably the piece of produce that most of us consume on a regular basis, some type of salad, maybe it's on our sandwiches. 3.5 gallons of water for 1 head of lettuce, and then tomatoes, about the same. The second piece to address is land. We're running out of space to grow food. The population is going from 7 billion in 2015 to 10 billion in 2050. We're going to need land mass the size of Brazil to accommodate the additional 3 billion people in feeding them if we continue to feed them the way we do now, and we continue to farm the way we do now. The next piece I wanted to really look at, and I think this is the most timely with the pandemic, is food safety and security. And food safety, in my mind, really looks at like the E. coli you see in the top left corner, some of the recalls that are just, they've been so prevalent. You know, in 2018, 2019, every time you turned on the news, there was another recall of lettuce. And romaine is one of the ones that are most commonly hit with E. coli because there's a lot of nooks and crannies right in the lettuce itself where the bacteria can stay and hide. And then the two other pictures are what we're seeing every day in our stores, right? Women with the masks grabbing bok choy and the beautiful produce. And I don't know about you, but I don't even want to grab the produce anymore. So who's coughed on it? Who's spit on it accidentally? You know, I mean, it's not, if it's not wrapped, I don't want to buy it. And then you think of, she's got the baggie in her hand, right? How many of you go to the store and have the baggie challenge? I have. You can't get it open. You've got a mask on. Some people have gloves on. You know, that's another safety issue. People are like licking their finger to get the bag open and they're grabbing the produce. But the security piece is another big component. And you hear food insecurity a lot right now. Food insecurity is not a new thing. Third world countries have struggled with it for decades. They really are the ones hit hardest with it because it really is the availability of our food and one's ability to access it. So we've gotten a glimpse of that in the most recent past here with COVID. You go to the store and you can't find toilet paper. You go to the store and you can't get milk or water. Produce, same thing, depending on the day. I remember going to the produce section and going, where's the lettuce? Where's the bananas? Where are the berries? I can't get any of those things that I traditionally get. And so for people that don't normally have food insecurity issues, for the first time in some of our lifetimes, we experienced it. And it's not a fun thing to have happen. It really, I think, fears may be too strong of a word, but it's really not a good feeling, right? And I talked about third world countries and the issue of food insecurity, but really closer to home, and this is in our own district here in Wheaton, District 200 is our school systems, and they created an insecurity crisis fund to aid students during the COVID pandemic. And if you look at that paragraph at the bottom, according to a post from this District 200, 28%, so nearly a third, of our students come from low-income households, and 3,300 rely on free and reduced fare lunches each day from the district. So now they're not going to school. Where are they going to get their food from? You know, the districts say these families are still struggling to provide food on the evenings and the weekends, even before Corona started, but we are providing breakfasts and lunches to those families, whether school's in session or not. And that's pretty awesome to see. But again, it just showcases, puts the magnifying glass on the potential food insecurity issues now and in the future. The fourth piece is what's called food miles. And really, food miles or transit is how you could look at it. Really, food miles equates to how much produce has to travel from the farm to your table. And on average, 4 countries, I was shocked when I read this, 4 countries are represented on our plate. So next time you sit down, maybe with your kids, just look at the labels and see how many countries are represented on your plate. You know, think of how far that lettuce has come to end at the base of your salad. It's shocking. Some of you may know this stat or not, but I remember the first time I heard it, it was like 1,500 miles. That is far. That is far to travel to our tables. And I saw this study. It's a food mile comparison. It's called Food, Fuel, and Freeways. And the data was pulled from the US Department of Agriculture, and they looked at how far produce traveled to a Chicago terminal market. And I hadn't heard that term before, but terminal market is really where brokers and wholesalers sell their produce to restaurants and to grocery stores. And they compared that to a local market in San Francisco called the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market. So if you look at the average distance from farm to market, I was shocked to see the distance, especially for apples and lettuce. Because those are things, I mean, we consume at least a dozen apples a week in our home and probably several heads of lettuce. 1,500 miles for apples. versus 77 at the farmer's market. 2,000 miles for lettuce versus 102 miles at the farmer's market. So extremely polar opposites with those pieces of produce. And you think about what you consume. If you look at that list, what does your family consume a lot of? Maybe it's grapes in the kids' lunches. I'm sure everybody has apples in their house. Maybe not as many tomatoes and greens, but still quite a few miles. So 1,500 miles to our table. So what? What's the big deal? At what cost? You know, there's a nutritional cost, and then there's an environmental and an economical cost. The nutritional cost, this part is fascinating to me as a trainer and a health coach. Our food declines in nutrition so rapidly. And the University of California study shows that vegetables lose 15 to 55% of their vitamin C in a week. Now, most of our produce, if it's coming 1,500 miles, is picked very, very early and ripened in the truck or ripened chemically in, you know, the store or in the production plant. And so what's really left in it when it gets to our plate, whether it's organic or not? If it's traveling that far, it's going to not have as much nutrition as something live hours, days before. Spinach, which we also eat a lot of, loses 90% of its nutrition within the first 24 hours after harvest. So, you know, if you can pick something really close to eating it, that's where the nutrient density is going to be at its peak. The environmental and the economical cost is also pretty daunting. The cost of transporting the food in terms of greenhouse gases, 250,000 tons of greenhouse gases in California alone are distributed into the atmosphere every year from the food that they import. It also suppresses the local economy. You know, if we're trying to get all of our food from elsewhere, what is that really doing for the local economy? Very little. Recently, there was a movement to buy local. You've probably heard of the locavore movement, you know, an emphasis on trying to eat things that are 100 miles or less from us. Eating local creates a reduction in greenhouse gases, transportation, fuel consumption, an increase in the freshness, the taste, the nutritional value. I just spoke of that in the slide before. And it has a positive influence on the local economy. You know, many of the international foods that we consume can be grown right here in the US, but they're not due to cheaper labor and processing costs abroad. So it's time to shift back to local food. You know, reducing the food miles starts with us. And it's as simple as beginning to grow food in your own home. So really, what does that look like? What can you do? You know, some people feel helpless, and there's a lot you could do. You know, join that locavore movement. And what can that look like? You know, some of you may already go to the farmer's market. I think that's becoming so much more readily available than ever before. I know within our surrounding towns, Wheaton, Winfield, we have probably 4 to 5 different farmers markets, and they're spread out with different days. So every day of the week, I could go to a different local farmers market. That's pretty awesome. Joining a CSA. CSA is community supported agriculture. Typically it comes in a box. Someone in your neighborhood would be in charge of having it delivered to their home, and you would get a box of produce. Oftentimes it's not anything that you would pick. It's whatever is grown in your area, and you have to get really creative and learn. I remember the first time we got a box, I was like, Jerusalem artichoke, what do I do with that? I had to look it up. We created new recipes around it, and it really stretched us as a family. And this website, localharvest.org, is a great resource to find a local CSA near you. Another thing that you can do is really grow produce for your local food pantries. We have several organizations very close to us. Some are friends and some are family, but they're people we've partnered with in the last 6 months to a year. Garden Works Project is a company that installs raised beds and small gardens in families, you know, homes, so they can take control of their food source. Doodlebug Workshop is a local downtown Wheaton not-for-profit, and they train children and adults with special needs. They teach them different skills, and one of them is to grow food, and they partner with the People's Resources. COD, College of DuPage, is our local community college, and they have a food pantry to combat food insecurity, and that's pretty amazing as well. And then Gabella Growers is a new thing my family's starting, a summer project for the kids, really just trying to do our part for the community, growing seedlings, probably going to have a vegetable market once a week. We're going to be growing food in our towers to give to the People's Resource as well. So I would encourage you to think outside the box. I think that's the one thing that COVID has really done for us, is slowed us all down a little and helped us look at ways that we can help, in our own small way. Plant a home garden. How many of you garden? Again, I can't see everyone's faces, but I would suspect over half of you garden in some form or fashion. And those of you that do not garden, I suspect you don't garden because you either don't have the space, you don't have the time, you don't have a green thumb, maybe access to water is challenging if you're in an apartment. Those are usually the obstacles to gardening. So what if there was an easier, eco-conscious way to garden? And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And again, those of you that know me know that this is a passion for me, and it's been a passion for me for about 8 years. Juice Plus is a company that bought the rights to the Tower Garden. The mission is to inspire healthy living around the world. And so partnering with the Tower Garden as a source to empower people to grow their own healthy food and get on a healthier path was just a match made in heaven. It happened in 2012. The Tower addresses the 4 issues I spoke of. It uses a lot less water. It's vertical, so a lot less land, 90% of both of those. It reduces the food miles we discussed. And these are just some pictures. Tim Blank, in 2014, I had the opportunity to meet him, the head horticulturist at Walt Disney World, the developer of the Tower Garden. We actually went to Walt Disney World and went to the Living on the Land exhibit. I bet quite a few of you have been there as well. Epcot uses the produce from their hydroponic and aquaponic gardens to feed the restaurants in Epcot. And then Stephen Ritz, I'll show a video of him shortly, but he's in my 2015 and 2019 photos. He is a global award-winning teacher in the Bronx, and he is doing incredible things. Every time I hear the man speak, I'm in tears because of how motivating he is. So if you get the opportunity to look him up, excuse me, I would do that. So Kermit the Frog, how many of you are a Muppet fan? He used to say it's not easy being green. I like to say it's now easy to be green. And I call it Tower Power. It's our money tree. It's really saving our family a lot of money. It's an upfront investment. However, it really pays for itself in a short period of time. So I'm going to show a short video on how the tower works.
Tower Garden's state-of-the-art aeroponic vertical garden system uses both water and air to produce more colorful, better-tasting, and incredibly nutritious fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Tower Garden has a 20-gallon reservoir at its base that stores the Tower Tonic nutrient solution. Developed by experts in plant and human nutrition, Tower Tonic Mineral Blend enables superior plant growth and better nutrition from your Tower Garden produce. The process begins once the seedlings have been placed in your Tower Garden. Here they will be nourished with Tower Tonic nutrient solution. Inside the reservoir is a small, low-wattage submersible pump. The pump pushes the nutrient solution up through the tower to the top. From there, the nutrient solution drips through the central tower using a special device that evenly cascades the solution over the exposed plant roots. On the journey down the tower, the nutrient solution feeds the roots and becomes highly oxygenated as it cascades gently down the reservoir. This process is continuous, providing fresh oxygen, water, and nutrients to the roots of the plants. This patented aeroponic process enables food crops to grow faster than they would in soil, so they can be harvested more often. And it makes Tower Garden a healthier, easier, smarter way to grow your produce.
Here's another one. This is a short video, but this is the Tower Garden home, which is designed, as it sounds, to be grown in your home year-round with lights. So this is just a comparison of the Tower Garden models. There is a home unit which is designed to grow inside year-round. They do have some schools that utilize that technology as well. The LED lights just mount on the top, and the basin is a lot smaller. It's 13 gallons instead of 20 with the Flex. So the Flex is what it sounds like. It's a very flexible unit. It can be grown indoors or out. The outdoor unit is obviously designed to have bigger plants on it, fruit-bearing things, prolific things, tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchinis and all sorts of large fruits. As I said before, there is so much significant savings with water and land, 98% less water, 90% less space. I was shocked to find out that it's a 30% more yield. So things grow not only faster because it's a controlled environment, but they grow bigger. And it's very nutritious. We've actually has a study from the University of Mississippi comparing traditional gardening to the Tower Garden Flex. And the produce in the Flex is as good or better nutrition-wise. So that was a benefit to see that. A lot of times I think people think hydroponics is less nutritious, but that's not the case. I've got one more video here, and this is really the history of the tower, and I think this is important to just hear where it came from and some of the applications all over the globe for the tower. Some very empowering things.
Well, I grew up in western North Dakota, and if you've ever been to western North Dakota, you'll know that it's a place often referred to as God's country, because it's a place where the bison still roam free, and agriculture dominates the landscape. And I guess that's where the seed of agriculture started in me. Growing up in a family with 5 siblings, we didn't get to take a vacation every summer, but by the time I was in high school, my family had the opportunity to take a vacation to Walt Disney World, and if you can imagine what an experience that was. And out of all the 4 theme parks at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida, the one that really stood out with me was Epcot, because Epcot was the place of the future. It was very inspirational to see all the different nationalities working together and all the different technologies. And the place that stood out the most to me was a special ride at Epcot called The Land. It was an hour-long backstage behind-the-scenes tour where they grew food crops from all over the world hydroponically. The thing I loved most about that backstage tour at The Land was it inspired me. I knew in that moment what I was going to go to school for.
I think we saw the bulk of it. I really just wanted to show you that it originated at Epcot, and there's quite a few applications. O'Hare, restaurants in New York City, rooftop restaurants, and I'm going to showcase a lot of those in the rest of the presentation, so we don't miss that content. But I also wanted to showcase the possibilities, because I think people think of it as something they would have in their backyard, and by all means, that is the #1 use, is that people can grow produce on their patio, on their balcony. We were in an apartment for several years, and we would have no other way to garden, but we had 2 tower gardens on a 4x6 balcony. It was pretty amazing. There's restaurants as an application. People use these in churches and homeless shelters, food pantries. I have them in a lot of schools, nursing homes, people that have compromised, physical abilities. They roll right up to the tower in their wheelchair and they can garden. A client with MS that wouldn't be able to garden otherwise. And that, to me, it just warms my heart to see people that love to grow their own food being able to grow their own food again. So limitless possibilities. I don't have a church myself that is sold to the tower or sold towers to, but there's quite a few churches across the country using tower gardens in their communities to feed the less fortunate. So the produce in the tower, what does it produce? I get that question a lot. This is Chef Mooney, and he is owner of Bell Book and Candle in New York. He's also owner of Bidwell, which is across from the Capitol building. So he has 2 restaurants now where he has the entire roof is occupied by towers, and they feed the restaurant with that produce solely. So you can see the list. I mean, it's really anything that grows above ground. No root vegetables, but cilantro, eggplant, nasturtium is an edible flower used on salads, squash, edamame, strawberries, peas, you name it. Again, if it isn't a root vegetable, it can be grown, or it's not a bush, it can be grown on the tower. This is an aerial view of his rooftop, and you can see how you can have an entire tower just of chives or of basil, and how it's so fragrant, and you can see the rich, dense color of it too, because it has a controlled environment, water and constant nutrition, the food supply. It really is the perfect environment for it to grow and thrive in. I have another video, and hopefully it'll be glitchless, but this is Stephen Ritz. I alluded to him earlier. He is the global award-winning teacher, and it's a 2-minute video, very, very short. Want to show you how schools are using it and how he is using it to really empower his students to show up to school, to change their environment at home. And it's really turning inner city Bronx, inner city New York students and communities around, and it's really amazing.
I love tower gardens in the classroom. They are the most cost-effective school garden aligned to academic outcomes one can ever imagine. And best of all, I can take my garden to the cafeteria, down the hallway, to one class, to another class, to another class, use it for science, use it for literacy, use it for art. Tower gardens are about so much more than growing healthy outcomes and growing healthy fruits and vegetables. They're about the science, the math, the record keeping, the data, the prediction, the analysis, and then of course there's the eating. And when you expand their palates, you expand their vocabularies. And when you expand their vocabularies, you expand their minds.
So, we use tower gardens in education a lot. Distributors across the country help teachers, students, other administrators to walk the students through a curriculum. We have a preset curriculum, pre-K through 11th grade. We continue to elaborate on that and partner with other institutions to develop higher levels of learning. We have a Tower Talk online community that allows educators to collaborate and to share their resources. We have an extensive Tower Garden YouTube series where everything from setting up a tower garden to harvesting to self-pollination if you're trying to grow fruit-bearing things inside. This is something that Stephen Ritz says: when we teach our kids about nature, we teach them to nurture. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I think the other big thing is when you teach kids to grow their own food, they want to eat it. They want to eat healthier because they see the fruits of their labor. And so many times kids are like, this is gross, I'm never going to eat this. And then you go into the schools a few weeks later and they're having kale salad and spinach salad and bok choy, and something they never would have had exposure to otherwise. And then these are just some of the photos of what we've done with towers personally and what our community has done with tower gardens. This is a picture of Gabriella when she was 2 or 3. Fast forward, she was in 3rd grade and Martin Luther King Day rolled around and everybody had to list what their dream was. And she had a dream that Tower Garden would come to her school, that she would get a Tower Garden in her school. And we did just that. And so the bottom picture is 3 generations: my dad, my daughter, and myself installing Tower Gardens in her school. Very, very fun, very rewarding. College of DuPage is our local junior college. We have them in the culinary arts program. We have them in the tech ed sustainability program. There's Thor and Elizabeth in there, dear friends, and they helped get those into the school and maintain them while they're there. We have Wheaton College, which is extremely local to us, the Myers Science Center, the Beamer Center. They go back and forth between the science building and the student union, where they have them in their cafeteria. And these are just local school photos, and just to show you the kind of the size of the produce. The bok choy is huge. The leaves are bigger than my hand. You know, my dad's in this top picture towards the right there. He's a farm boy, and I'm never going to grow without dirt. And now he's got 3 towers of his own, and you can see how prolific the zucchini and the cucumbers are. Jessica Alba's even on here. See, all the rich and famous people like them too. This is O'Hare. Those of you that travel internationally and go through O'Hare, there are quite a few. I think it's 30 towers. Don't quote me, but it's pretty powerful to see the scope and the magnitude of those towers. They use the produce from the towers to fuel the restaurants. I think there's up to 60 restaurants in O'Hare, and that was fun to see. I know there's a picture of me in the bottom right corner. It's right next to the yoga studio too. So take a yoga class while you're there as well. The community garden. This is something we started doing not too long ago, a few years ago, I guess. 12 tower gardens for an application like a church, or let's say a people's resource where there's a need for a food pantry. It's 12 towers and yields up to 336 plants. So you can imagine the volume of produce that can yield. It's pretty amazing. That could be a restaurant application or a larger school setting as well. You know, I'm always looking for corporate sponsorships. If anybody knows anyone, that's usually the obstacle for people. If they want to put that in somewhere, is the cost. But really the cost for 12 towers is significantly lower per tower than it is to do individually. This is one of my favorite quotes, and you've probably heard this before. Hand a man a fish and you feed him for the day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. You know, my adapted version of that is hand a woman produce and you feed her for a day. Teach a woman to grow produce or to garden sustainably, and you feed her family, her community, her county, her country, her continent for a lifetime while saving Mother Earth. So how can you help spread our mission of inspiring healthy living and giving? Again, I kind of cast some vision of where they are and where we want them to be. Schools, restaurants, food pantries, churches, individual families. There's grants available. I've worked with the district several times now to get more towers in the school, and they've sponsored, I think, 6 towers so far locally to allow the students to learn on them and to take the produce home to families that need them. Sponsorship opportunities for businesses as well. So grow up with us. You know, please reach out, you know, send feedback, send questions, send connections. My favorite part of getting in front of a large group of people is just how the power of like-minded people is just, and the intention of what we can do as a group. So, you know, I'm hoping we'll open this up to questions. We'll shut down the recording here soon, but I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to answer your questions. I'd love to hear, you know, what your thoughts were, who you might be able to connect us with, to spread our mission of getting more people eating healthier and eating closer to home.
Okay, first question, can you use any seeds?
You can. That's a great question. The Tower Garden system comes with a starter set of seeds, but really you can get them from anywhere. I've got a couple suppliers I can share with you, but it comes with a basic set of starter seeds, things that we know everybody would be happy consuming, things like spring greens and basil and a chive is kind of a basic herb and lettuce combination, but I've grown everything from Japanese eggplant to cantaloupe to heirloom purple tomatoes. So any seed will do, hopefully organic.
And how easy is it to get started with the Tower Garden? Because it does look a little complicated. Is there training available?
There is definitely training available if you're local. I love to come and help set up a tower and really guide you through the process. But if you're not local, that's fine too. We do little, virtual coaching like this, but there's a ton of resources already out there between our YouTube channel and between the video series. There's how to set it up, how to deal with pests if there are any, how to, or when there are some, there's going to be some, but it's nowhere near traditional gardening. There's also a Facebook group, a pretty large Facebook community that we could tie you into as well. I mean, I've taken pictures of things and said, hey, what is this? And what do I do with that? And within, 10 minutes, I'll have 5 people giving answers and resources and guiding.
And someone is asking what the cost is.
It's a great question. I can send you the details, but really I tell people it's less than $5 a day. It's really closer to $3 a day. It depends on how big you want the tower to be and what you want to grow on it. But we have both that home unit and the flex unit. The home unit is significantly greater because it comes with LED lights. But all of our towers are available on an installment plan, and that's how we did it. So for about $50 to $60 a month, at the end of the year, we owned our tower, and now we're on year 8. And really, the cost after you own it, the cost is about $60 to $100 a year maximum. And that's for liquid food and seed. Seed is cheap. The liquid food is about $60 for a gallon of both the A and B tonic. Awesome questions.
And another good question, how much time does it take to care for it each, like on a day-to-day or week-by-week basis?
That's an awesome question. I think it's, again, so much less than traditional gardening. I have been a traditional gardener for 20 plus years. I have raised beds and, I till and amend my soil. And I will tell you, I spend at least 5 times more time in those gardens than I do with the tower. The thing you're going to spend the most time with is checking it. You need to look at the tower, daily would be ideal, at least every other day. It's not a plug and play system where you leave it in the corner and don't touch it, because it will grow like crazy. It will take over your patio if you don't harvest from it. It will have, at some point in time, will have some kind of insects, because any kind of produce can have bugs of some kind, depending on where it is and what else you're growing in your yard or your home. Watering is one of the things you'll have to do, as things get bigger. There's a 20-gallon reservoir in the base for the flex. There's a 13-gallon reservoir for the home. If you're growing smaller things, you can go a week or 2 without adding water. If you're growing tomatoes, cucumbers, big fruit-bearing things that take a lot of water and it's hot out, I can add up to 5 or 7 gallons a week to a tower in the dead of summer. So it varies, but the biggest thing is just making sure there's water in there, because the plants will die without water. There's a submersible pump in the bottom, which you saw in that video, but if there's not enough water in the basin, the pump can't shoot water up into the plant roots, and then it will quickly die. So you do have to keep it plugged in, and you do have to have water supply. And that actually reminds me of something, because Shannon is actually a solar guru, and maybe she can answer this at some point, but you need an outlet typically, but I have found a solar panel I can run my towers on as well. So I know there's resources if people do not have access to electricity to also run the towers on solar.
Okay, next question we have is, once you harvest it, how quickly does it replenish?
Depends on what you're harvesting. Lettuce and herbs are extremely quick to replenish. Like a spring green, I would say 2 weeks, 3 weeks. There's a couple different ways to harvest. You can harvest from the perimeter of a head of lettuce, let's say, and then you're not taking away the whole thing. So it's not really going to replenish because you're taking pieces of it. But I almost prefer to behead my lettuce. Like, you leave about an inch at the bottom and you trim the whole thing, and that'll be dinner. Literally within 2 weeks, we'll be eating off that same head of lettuce. It's very fast. And I would say you get about 2 or 3 harvests out of each plant before it gets bitter. and you'll want to reseed. But now if it's something like tomato or cucumber, you're not going to reseed that. That's going to be the same plant throughout the whole season, and then you're just going to be harvesting the fruit, or on a basil, harvesting the individual leaves. So rarely will you completely cut those back, ever. But lettuces, you do that all the time. Good questions.
And do you grow year round with the tower?
I personally do. I grow about 8 or 9 months outside, and then the other 3 months inside with lights. Yep.
And how much sunlight is needed for the outside tower?
Great question, Elizabeth. The outside tower, 5 hours, I would say minimum. A lot of it depends on what you're growing. There are things that will grow better in shade and things that will grow better in full, intense sun. But at a minimum, 5 hours of overhead sun outside.
And then for the inside tower, does that need a lot of light? But I'm assuming it comes with the light.
No, that's a good question, but it's counterintuitive, kind of, because the lights are on it. So it could be in a basement. I've had people put a tower garden in a closet, a big abandoned closet in their home, because you have the LEDs mounted to the unit itself. The only light you need is the LED light. So it doesn't need additional light. I know there are people that want to try to grow tower gardens inside without a light, and I rarely see that be successful. Like a Florida room, Four Seasons room, it needs a lot of overhead sun. So unless your Florida room is getting intense 5 hours or more overhead sun, you're going to need supplemental lighting for it to really thrive.
I was wondering about the critters and how, do you still get them on the outside tower garden?
Fine critter. Tell me critter, because people call deers critters, people call
Yeah.
critters.
I'm thinking bunnies might not come to eat them, but maybe squirrels or raccoons.
It's a good question. Honestly, 8 years of outdoor growing, I have raccoon families, possum families, skunks, you name it. Nothing touches it besides smaller things. Like, I had a beautiful rose bush that had Japanese beetle last year, and of course they jump from the rose bush to the tower. That's a nightmare, but that's not the tower's fault. That's my fault for not getting them off the rose bushes, right? I will tell you what's really exciting with what I consider a critter: squirrel, bunny, the annoying critters. They're cute, but boy, they take down food really fast. The lettuces I could not grow in my traditional garden for years. I had chicken wire and construction fencing, and those little critters, those buggers, would go under, over, through. Could never grow lettuce, and they do not touch the tower. They do not touch the towers. There's the small submersible pump has a little bit of a hum to it, and I think it's enough to scare them away. Now, if you have a deer family, they will have a buffet on your tower. They are not afraid of the pump, and you have to, put some forming of cage or fencing around it, or they literally will have lunch daily on your tower.
All right, good to know. Here's another great question. Do you notice a taste compared to, purchased greens versus your tower garden?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. It's night and day. Both the color, the smell, the taste, everything about it. You will not. I cannot buy produce, or cannot buy herbs, especially in the store. Basil's $4.99 for organic basil, and you get it home. I threw it out because it was too bad. I almost brought it on the on the video today to show you, like, 3 leaves out of that entire box, bag, whatever you call it, were usable. The rest were moldy, smelly. They had no color. And the tower garden, my basil plants on my tower, I'm probably harvesting 20 to 30 times the amount of what I would buy in one of those little $4.99 things from the store. So when people say tower garden's expensive, I'm like, compared to what? Compared to what? You don't buy organic produce in the store much, apparently, because I think Tammy said it earlier too, that because it's hydrated so well, it's getting a constant source of water and nutrition. If you juice anything from the tower, celery, Swiss chard, bok choy, you need like a fifth of the produce because it's so hydrated. I mean, it's amazing. If you took bok choy from the store and bok choy from the tower and juiced them both, you would be shocked with the volume of juice you get from a tower piece of produce.